10 out of 10 landed.
Finally, it's here. Let's see if it's a 10 out of 10.
Deathloop, not to be confused with Looper.
Can't really remember Looper, but it feels like to a point it has a similar premise.
Okay, I won't say that again. Anyway, Deathloop is another take on a roguelike in the AAA industry. The corporation is taking all the indie genres. We now have the Fireworks on Wheels, Returnal, and now we have Deathloop. A lot of people out there are saying that this is a 10 out of 10 game of the year. Is the game really worth that 10 out of 10 rating that only a few reach through the years? If so, we are putting Deathloop on the same level as God of War, this being the only 10 out of 10 I personally agree with.
Yeah, I said it. I don't think Zelda Breath of the Wild or Metal Gear 5 should be a 10 out of 10.
I can at least understand the Zelda, but in Metal Gear 5, Jesus, half the game was copy and pasted from the first part and it's missing the whole Act 3. Anyway, Deathloop is a first-person puzzle roguelike developed by Arcane Studios, the same studio behind Prey and the Dishonored series. It looks like in this game they took both games and they had a baby, and then the baby had a baby with awesome powers.
I would like to see the baby.
Yeah, baby!
To make Deathloop. You may be slightly confused, don't worry, that's going to happen a lot with this game, as Arcane is a Bethesda shooter and Bethesda is owned by Xbox. It's similar to Disney buying Fox to get all the Marvel characters, but in Marvel Hunt there is a Spider-Man who's owned by Sony, of all companies, making it impossible for Marvel to own Spider-Man. This deal is slightly how Deathloop is with the PlayStation exclusive, as the deal was struck before Xbox bought Bethesda, making PlayStation fans feel like this.
What's this about a deal with the Chinese?
It is likely that we will see Deathloop on Xbox at some point, but it's definitely exclusive for at least a year. Looking at the current numbers as well, it's going to make a lot of money for PlayStation, and not much for Xbox, with it being a PlayStation exclusive for at least a year. But it's also one of the last Bethesda games we're going to see on PlayStation. But at least it's going out with a bang, but is it a 10 out of 10 bang? It's also kind of funny as Spider-Man is owned by Sony, who owns PlayStation, as it's kind of a similar story, but in different worlds. Right, stepping away from actually talking about the studio and talking about Deathloop now. Deathloop's story is set around you being stuck in a loop of death, but every day is the same. With a new day comes a new loop, kind of like Groundhog Day, but a lot more confusing.
He's stuck.
You play as two sides of the coin here. One side you play as Colt, someone who seems pretty happy within the loop until something changes in his mind, while the other side is Juliana. It's Juliana, who is on a task to stop you breaking the loop. This is where most of the story is coming from. The full-blown story is told through the perspective of Colt, mostly. Juliana does speak to you a lot through your playthrough as Colt, but mostly either at the start of the game or the start of every run on a level. Most of the story is told through the first part of the game, and it's a whole puzzle on what is going on and who Colt is, who Juliana is. A lot of the story is told through reading, making this kind of a nightmare for a dyslexic like me. The whole game starts with you dying by getting stabbed in the chest. This is where you first wake up on the beach in the game, and this is where the confusion starts. Also, you'll be seeing this bitch a lot, so get used to it. The game has a lot to take in, and soon after this you go through a very long tutorial that is surprisingly doesn't feel like a tutorial. I would say this is where the bulk of the story is actually told to you, with it explaining a lot of what's going on. It's amazing how the game is teaching you everything about the game. At the same time, the main character Colt has no clue what's going on, like you and me. This is where we learn what the loop is and who Colt was before the loop or within the loop. Not gonna lie, I'm still slightly confused, so if I do miss anything, I'm still slightly confused myself on what is going on within this game. But this is where you learn a lot of the mechanics from trinkets, a hacking device. We will get into that. After finding your base of operations, which isn't hard to find as it's right in front of you, some more things get explained to you, like that water hurts you because it's too cold, but I'm wearing shoes, so I'm not sure how I die straight away from standing in a puddle. It is though a good way to explain why you can't swim away, I suppose. Then we have the iconic arcane machete. It feels like every game has one. To be honest, I used it a lot, so I'm not complaining. With Colt losing his memory for some reason, I don't think it's really explained why he loses memory, and sometimes has it but sometimes it doesn't. But this is where you try and find the codes to get in and out of your base because you've forgotten it for some reason or another. We see a lot of cloud writing explaining some mechanics. If you think this is too much reading, wait until the story really gets going. But if you do play a lot of Arcane games or Bethesda games in general, you'll slowly be used used to reading this much in between the action, but it does, to me, kind of kill the momentum. But they do use reading documents as to tell most of the lore within the game. This does feel like a bad decision within the game though, as Colt and Juliana have so many good conversations throughout. Just wish more of the story was told through them rather than massive documents. This is why the start of the game, to me, is the best bit. The dynamic between both characters telling the story is great. I'm not really sure why they didn't do this a lot more throughout the whole game. Then you find the code, get attacked in a cutscene where Colt thinks he's dated Juliana. Ooh. We get the code, then kill ourselves and start over right back at the beach again. Get used to this beach and get used to this code. You'll use it a lot. I can now remember it by heart, 0336, but if you do forget, it's put on the screen every time you die, but you'll have some nightmares about this number. Remember, at this point we are still in the tutorial, and this is where we technically start the first level. This is where you'll get taught that every run on every level is your kind of playground, making it possible to go in guns blazing or the boring old stealth route like this. Patient and that bit. The level is pretty simple, and you have to get to your apartment and open a safe, but no, you don't have the code for that safe. After this, then we go to 2 different areas and end up finding out Colt was a security guard, end up finding the code in his security station. Then in the safe we've been trying to get into for about an hour now, we're trying to get a LPP that will apparently explain how to break the loop.
I'm not sure what LPP stands for, but I'm going with Loop Poop Protocol.
Not long after this, one of the best mechanics is introduced to you in the game, the invasion mechanic. Really surprising that we don't see this mechanic much in games. The only 2 of the games I can think off my head is Dying Light and Dark Souls that have a similar mechanic. When this happens, Juliana invades your game and it's controlled by another player. When she killed you, the loop starts all over again and you lose all your items. She also doesn't let you leave until you hack the satellite. You can do that without killing her, but killing her and then hacking the satellite is most likely the way you're going to do this. There's no way of predicting what Juliana will do due to her being played by another player online. It's possible that at this point you're in the 3rd hour in the game, and guess what? We're still in the tutorial. When you get to play as Juliana, she is very weak compared to Colt, what does kind of ruin the experience slightly. Now we have all the codes, we go back to the apartment and find the Loop Poop Protocol. And find out we have to kill 8 people, what are called visionaries, in one loop. Loop is split into 4 chapters, noon, morning, night and afternoon I think it is. So we're going to have to kill more than 1 each chapter. This leads into the next part of the game where we'll have to follow leads and get some of them in the same place to kill them all in one perfect loop. Some may say a 10 out of 10 loop. At this point we now get told by another cult that there's loads of different cults, which I still don't understand. I understand that this is a mystery game, but I'm still trying to figure out after finishing the game 2 days ago when writing this. But now we are at the full part of the game as you follow leads, learn a bit more about the loop and then go and kill everyone in that perfect day. You will also kill these visionaries multiple times to lead up to this perfect loop. That's all the straightforward elements. Now officially the tutorial has ended. After this we don't see much of the beach as it's just shown in a short cutscene every time the loop starts. Every time you start a new mission or go after a new lead, you just start in that area and go off on your adventure. The characters throughout the game are great. It's sad we don't get to see more of them. The story progression of every character is from afar and kind of makes me feel like I'm listening to my neighbours arguing. And if you haven't guessed it, the whole game also has an Austin Powers feel to it. This mixed with the humour makes it enjoyable. It does feel like it could have been expanded on if it takes a backseat to the whole experience. So after the full games opens up, it's possible to play as Juliana and invade other players. This adds another layer to the game. It starts off with a small cutscene that shows another Juliana giving another Juliana the location of Colt. This is really the only story element shown when playing as her. It does feel like Juliana's story could have been interesting to explore, but we just don't really see it. But at least you can do this to other players. Through your gameplay, it feels like you came across more experienced Julianas, and by the end of the loop, she arrives near every time you load into the level, ready to kill you like this. If she kills you, you start a loop again, but if you win, I don't think you can be invaded again. I never experienced it twice, so yeah, I died a lot here. It did feel like Juliana is an underused character in the game, sadly, making her solely really just a mechanic throughout the game. And after you know who she is, it's kind of weird continuing this invasion mechanic. It does feel that there's also an issue with the invasion mechanic. When you get into the invasion mode, you feel very weak compared to Colt. I understand that it would be annoying to be fighting like a juggernaut Juliana, but Colt does have 3 lives, making it feel like there is some massive balance issues within the invasion mode. I'm not saying that because of my stats either. It feels like you could be shooting Colt for ages with no sign of death. And Colt can just take you out really quickly with better guns and an insta-kill melee attack. Juliana doesn't really feel like she has the upper hand in any situation. It feels like there is more of a balance needed for this mode on both sides to make the invasion mode more enjoyable. Because even when I get invaded, I can just use my poison gun on Juliana and she can't stand a chance against it. Makes the invasion mode feel pretty boring after a while. Here we go into more issues of the game that kind of step this away from a 10 out of 10 mark. And there where we find more issues in the loop and find out why 10 out of 10 may be pushing it a bit. Why there being some frame rate drops when there are too many enemies on the screen. I'd be happy for them just to piss off to fix it. I also came across 4 completely different crashes of the game, and I'm playing on a PS5, so it should be running smoothly without crashing on the last part. One of the biggest glitches was the audio crash at the end of the game. Look at this audio break, or rather, listen, I thought I broke my TV at the time. No, my biggest issue with the whole game is the length of the warp ability. What the hell is this? I can hardly make any jump. Oh wait, there's an upgrade to it. That's obviously a lie. The teleporting ability is one of my favourite things of the game. However, sadly, there really isn't many abilities for the game. The way you get the abilities as Colt is by defeating the Visionaries or beating Juliana when she invades. The bad thing is here that it's all the same way of upgrading each ability. But I suppose that comes with the roguelike. The way you upgrade as Juliana is just by leveling up and playing online. This does come to my last issue, the lack of customization within both Colt and Juliana. Playing as Colt, you upgrade and get your slabs, what are the name of the abilities in the game, same way, and there is only 5. They all have their names, but basically I call them teleport, invisibility, rage, multi-kill, connect, and lastly throw. All these are enjoyable to use and are upgradable, but it just feels like there should have been more. So Colt's special ability is the 3 lives in a loop, kind of like retro games where you saw the heads in the corner. Then Juliana's has the ability to swap faces. These 2 abilities are the abilities that make each character stand out and kind of different. The only way Juliana gets her abilities, and really any item whatsoever, is just leveling up in the invasion mode. It looks to be random. It feels like the weakest part of the game. The way Juliana gains new abilities and weapons just feels very boring through points depending on what happens in invasion mode. I suppose it does try to make you more creative in the way you murder Colt though, but that's the only good part. The only way of getting Colt new items is finding them mid-game, and the only really good items are with the Visionaries, as they have good weapons, but there's also secret weapons you can find throughout your playthrough. However, if you do get them, the only way to keep them is to use this stuff. You do lose all the items if you get killed more than 3 times in the loop or at the end of the day and you haven't spent it, but if Juliana kills you, you lose it altogether as the loop resets. This is the only way to keep any items after the loop ends that day as Colt. A lot better than how you upgrade Juliana, but it still feels very weird put together, but it does stop you from becoming overpowered early on in the game. It also feels like there is a lack of versions of weapons. They're good, don't get me wrong, but not much makes me want to look for them. I found my 2 favourite guns pretty early on with the poison pistol and then just a normal pistol, what I used mostly throughout my playthrough. Later on I just found a rarer version of that pistol, but it didn't really change much. The poison pistol was a nice touch, but it felt like more things like this should have been added in the game. What I found was only 1 gun like this in the whole game, and there's the fact there's only 12 cosmetics to unlock for each character. All these different versions of Colt and Juliana are hinted at, but we only really see 12 cosmetics version of them. What's that sound I hear, you ask? It's the most annoying sound in the world. Why they would put an annoying beep in here when I'm trying to wait for an online game is beyond me, but it's got on my nerves so much sometimes it makes me rage quit. Not because I died 5 times in a row. This sums up Deathloop's ups and downs. Arkane Studio has made so many good games that are underrated, like Prey and Dishonored 2. This game really shows what they can do, but looking through everything that this game does, it feels like it's being looked at for its originality more than what it does right or wrong. Originality is hard to find in the gaming market industry as a whole, definitely in the AAA market, making this a breath of fresh air. 10 out of 10, maybe not. It definitely has some great characters and some great gameplay with the invasion mechanics working pretty well. 10 out of 10 though is definitely pushing it. However, this being maybe the last Bethesda game for the PlayStation, It feels like a swan song and a last goodbye to its PlayStation fans, a tribute of sorts, and we say goodbye to Bethesda and destroy the final loop. Ooh, hello Xbox. That is it for the Deathloop. I was surprised with this game, but after playing a lot of quote unquote 10 out of 10 games, this one doesn't feel like it. When looking at 10 out of 10 games, there shouldn't be any way to improve the experience, but I can think of a lot. The game is definitely hitting at that 8 out of 10 mark at the end. At the end, the answer is no, Deathloop isn't a 10 out of 10. It was released in a year where a lot of games have been delayed, and it could easily become 2021's best game of the year, but 10 out of 10 maybe not.
And that's the end of the loop. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next MumblinGamer. I'm not getting shocked.